Monster Professor.
Welcome to the Monster Professor, a show in which we discuss and explore monsters in literature, myth, film, games, folklore, culture, and beyond. I'm your host, Josh Woods, author, editor, professor, and monster expert. And of those monsters, who slays them best? Who is the most iconic monster slayer of all time? Not the earliest, not the most recent, but the most iconic. We might have to agree it's Hercules or Heracles, but we're going to use the Latin pronunciation Hercules through this because the most iconic image of Hercules that I think we have in pop culture is Kevin Sorbo's Hercules from Hercules, The Legendary Journeys. Well, I get to speak with him today about his career as a monster slayer, as an action hero, and as a guy who portrays this classic kind of shining beacon hero, a warrior for good, as well as anybody can on screen or elsewhere. Kevin Sorbo is also known for, well, a lot of things, I guess. He also played Captain Dylan Hunt as the lead in Gene Roddenberry's Andromeda, a series that was really popular for a while, kind of at the tail end of the Hercules era. But he's been a driving force in Hollywood for over 3 decades. The man has an insane work ethic, 148 acting credits, although more than that by the end of this week, I'm sure, as a producer, 26 credits. He's a director, writer. He does charity work. He's a national spokesperson for the After School Alliance, for a World Fit for Kids, a ton of things. His book, True Strength, My Journey from Hercules to Mere Mortal and How Nearly Dying Saved My Life, is a huge hit and bestseller. He's got links to his various projects are in the description below, as you'll hear in our conversation. So it's a huge honor and pleasure to speak with him today. And a big thanks goes out to Eric Yeager for making this happen today. And those of you who are a little bit familiar with, say, Hercules in myth and legend might remember, or I don't know, you might balk at this idea of like, wait a minute, wasn't Hercules like this kind of brutal, almost Neolithic kind of murderer, womanizer kind of thing? Well, in the original myths, yeah, he was. But very, very early on in classical mythology or in storytelling or literature, depending on how you want to talk about it, Hercules became this image of something more akin to a moral hero. That really started with, I would say, Prodicus, maybe in the 5th century BC. The choice of Hercules, in which Hercules is this character who has to choose between the paths of vice and virtue. This very kind of moral, allegorical tale. Cicero picked that up in the 1st century. Medieval and Renaissance Christians kept using Hercules as an allegory of man struggling against the whims and cruelty of this world and sacrificing himself for the greater good. And for a lot of us, that is what the hero has come to embody, or at least the classic hero, not the anti-hero, but we'll get into that in our conversation soon. And so I think it's on track to end up with a Hercules of the kind that Kevin Sorbo has portrayed so well. But you know what? I've introduced this enough. What do you say we get into this conversation? Let's go with Kevin Sorbo. Well, first of all, it's a huge pleasure and honor to speak with Kevin Sorbo. Mr. Sorbo, thank you so much for coming and joining me on the Monster Professor podcast.
It's a pleasure to be here.
I want to jump into your background and your current projects in a little bit, but I figured maybe we'd start off in the deep end here, just a deep dive. On this podcast, we discuss monsters, all things monsters, and including monster slaying. And the greatest monster slayer of all time, I think everybody has to recognize, is the great Hercules. And when everybody Well, everybody in America right now, and for quite some time, thinks of Hercules. They think of Kevin Sorbo, even though that was years ago and you've had tons and tons of other projects. I'm curious, first of all, how you feel being so strongly associated with this iconic hero.
Well, I love it. I mean, I remember as a little kid growing up, my older brothers were 5 and 6 years older than me, and they were big fans of Steve Reeves. I remember watching reruns of Hercules Unchained. And as a little kid, I thought Steve Reeves was just a stud, So, I remember, seventh and eighth grade, a kid, I read a lot of mythology on my own. It wasn't like something in the school, but I used to read a lot, and I was just fascinated by mythology. So it ended up being Hercules. I mean, I didn't go out to LA, pursue my little actor's dream to think that one day I'd play Hercules on TV. It just sort of worked out that way when I got cast after 2,800 actors auditioned for the role of Hercules in North America. I was the one that ended up getting the role and spending, a whole year with Anthony Quinn, who played Zeus. And by the third movie, Universal Studios said, "We love what we see," and they made it a series. And by our third season, we became the most watched show in the world. I mean, how cool to be part of something like that, and the whole time living in New Zealand for 7 years was a bonus for me. It's a fantastic country. So I think it's cool. I got to throw out there. I remember a couple of years ago, maybe it's like 3 or 4 years ago, there was somebody sent it to me, said, "Hey, they did a poll and on who's the most favorite Hercules," and up there against Arnold Schwarzenegger and Lou Ferrigno and Steve Reeves, and then I garnered and also they had. Oh my God, my mind's just blank. It's only one of the biggest stars in the world right now. Oh, come on, The Rock, Dwayne Johnson.
Oh, Dwayne Johnson, yeah.
I had like 88% of the votes were for me as their most favorite Hercules. So I was honored with Dwayne, who's got 100 million people following him. So that was pretty cool. So I'm honored by that. And without the success of that, I wouldn't got Andromeda after that, and all these movies I've been shooting since.
Yeah, that 88% isn't a huge surprise to me, because it seems to me, in my geeky way of overanalyzing everything, that you brought something different to that role than all those other actors you've named, as fantastic as they are in their own rights. And it came at a weird time in the 90s, when your version of Hercules was the most popular show, at least in America and many in other countries. That was an era of like dark anti-heroes, of snarky cynicism or irony about heroes, where all the protagonists had to be like half villain or half monsters, and very, very few stood out as like the classic shining beacon hero, like the hero for light and goodness and doing right. I guess one could say, maybe, Lois and Clark was that too. But as far as I know, you were first pegged for that role as well. So there's something that you bring to these kinds of roles, that is that kind of, well, standing up against this kind of trend of darkness and cynicism, this kind of, I don't know, a kind of throwback or conservative kind of defiance or bulwark. Like this is a traditional hero. So, and that's not the only role, of course. You mentioned in Andromeda, Dylan Hunt is that kind of guy too, to rekindle the light of civilization. Even Cole, I think the Conqueror is that. So there seems to be some either connection or perhaps appeal. So I'm curious if you felt that appeal, or if you know, why does that kind of role appeal to you, or why are you so good at portraying that kind of shining beacon hero?
Well, initially it was going to be 5 2-hour movies, and like I said, in the Universal by the third movie, loved what we were seeing. And I told Sam Raimi, who was our exec producer, I said, the most important thing, this is such an easy show to make fun of. So I think we got to be a wink in your eye kind of thing. We want people to laugh with us, not laugh at us. And Sam has that touch with his, just sort of corny, funny humor. And they certainly put it in the episodes. We had some serious episodes too, but overall, the series always had, even though it was mythological, not biblical, there was still always very good moral messages in the episodes. And we ended up on 176 countries and passing Baywatch as the number one TV show in the world, and just having all these great things happen. We had a blast on the show. I mean, by season 3, when we spun off Xena, at that same time, people probably don't remember, all these other copycat shows came out, like Sinbad and Robin Hood and Sheena and Tarzan.
Oh, yeah.
And Conan. So everybody, that's what Hollywood does, though. If something's successful, whether it's a movie or TV, they kind of pump out the same sort of thing to compete and also kind of cachet on it. And, but we were the ones who started it. And I think people saw how much fun we had because the show was fun. It was a great ride. And I worked with amazing people down in New Zealand that went on to, Peter Jackson used to come on the set to see how the crew was developing. And he was, writing the trilogy of the Lord of the Rings during that time. And he took about 90% of my crew, and they all kind of went on to win Academy Awards, for best wardrobe design and visual effects and all that stuff. So it was neat to be part of the growth of New Zealand industry for sure. And just, the growth of my career at the same time. So it was, I like those kind of roles. As you mentioned, we started celebrating the anti-hero back in the 60s when you had the Vietnam War and you had the hippie movement and free love and drugs and craziness. And we started making, I'm a big Butch Cassidy and Sundance film fan as well, but come on, those guys were cold-blooded murderers and robbed people, but they gave two good-looking dudes and Paul Newman and Redford and make them very, quippy and very smart and very funny. I don't think the real guys were probably that way, but we had, you're right, what we kind of moved into decades, I think, of glorifying the negative instead of the positive. And I like to be part of the positive. I still think we need that guy that's got, believes in good triumph over evil instead of the other way around, which you see being played out in the world right now.
Yeah, and you've, even in real life, when things might seem to have been going as good as they could possibly go, not unlike Hercules, the petty gods of nature attack you in various ways and kind of give you either wake-up calls or make life-altering moments. I'm thinking of a couple of moments in your life: a blizzard that changed your life, but also a series of strokes. So I was curious if you could, let listeners know the kind of like battles out of the blue that you've had in real life to continue going the way you're going.
Well, usually when people suffer strokes, there's reasons behind it. You're older, you're pre-existing conditions, you got you're obese, you're high blood pressure, you have had previous heart attacks or whatever. Here I am in great shape. I'm 6'3", I'm 225 pounds, at 7% fat, and I'm ripped up. And I had an aneurysm in my left shoulder I didn't know about, way up on my neck. And the thing opened up and sent hundreds of clots in my arm. But unfortunately, 4 clots worked their way in my brain. So I went from the guy that was in better shape than most guys who were in their 20s, and I'm in my 30s at the time, to a guy that couldn't stand up and walk. And it took me 4 months to learn how to walk and balance again. It took me 3 full years to recover from it. And it was just a fluky thing. It was just a weird, crazy thing that happened to me. So I wrote a book called True Strength: My Journey from Hercules to Mere Mortal and How Nearly Dying Saved My Life. And it was, that big door closed on a career that was sort of promising, and they were going to sort of, gear me up to be the next guy to take over for Arnold. And I just had come out with Call of the Conqueror, and I was about to do another action movie. And then this happened to me. So I'm grateful for Universal to keep the Hercules series going. It wasn't out of the goodness of their heart. It was a huge cash cow for them. But for me, it gave me hope. It gave me light at the end of a very long and dark tunnel. So I wrote the book, and it's been amazing, the response from it. And a door opened up to me that I thought I'd never be doing, and that's public speaking. I do at least 15 to 20 speaking events a year across the country. And it's been interesting. And it's been interesting to see the response from people that have gone through their own roadblocks, because everybody's going to hit a roadblock, and how are you going to react to that? It's easy to get down. It's easy to blame God, family, friends, the world, whatever, because that's what most people like to do. Whenever I got down, my wife just said, "Hey, it happened. What are you going to do?" And the reality is, you got to find your own true strength. That's the title of the book, because on Hercules, I had a bunch of stunt guys making me look like a stud. So it was, how do you react to roadblocks in life? We're not promised an easy life. And you can give up and just blame the world, or you can look in the mirror and say, you know what, I'm getting better, I'm getting stronger, and I'm going to beat this thing. and have a more positive attitude instead of, just feeling sorry for yourself, because things happen and crap happens to everybody eventually. So this book is written as a motivational piece to, get you off your butt and say, okay, I'm going to work really hard to get better. I may not be the same person, but I'm not going to let this thing defeat me. And that's been sort of my mantra ever since.
Yeah, and I think it's been inspirational to a lot of people. You will, and you mentioned that a lot of studs are making you look awesome as in the stunt world. But as far as I know, you would do perhaps way more of your own stunts than any producer other than Sam Raimi would ever let any star do. Is that true? Were you doing a ton of your own stunts?
Oh yeah, I loved it because I was a football and basketball guy all through school and college and everything. I just love sports. So to me, it was a continuation of that. I mean, my stunt guys were awesome. We rehearsed pretty much every day because we had 3 fight scenes every episode. So it's like a dance, it's well choreographed. And you screw up, people get hurt. I had enough of my own injuries with it, but I just enjoyed doing it. It was so much fun. And I think initially they were worried about it. But by the second movie, halfway through, they just said, "Well, he's good at them, so he wants to do them. So let's let him keep doing it." I remember a director coming on to direct one of those movies. Maybe it was a second or third movie. He was prepping for it because he wasn't. We were still filming the previous movie, and he said he does his own stunts, because this is what they told me later. One of the producers, Eric Grundeman, he said, "Oh yeah, he loves it." He goes, "That's amazing." He was sort of shocked by it, but it's fun. It's a fun thing to do. And I'm not the only one does that. I'm sure, you got guys like Tom Cruise does amazing stunts, and you got guys like The Rock that does a lot of his own stunts too. And I think it comes from a competitive sort of background and carries over into that make-believe world of acting.
Well, you know what? At this point, a lot of listeners might be going, okay, that's the monster slayer, but where are the monsters? So maybe we'll just jump right into some of the
Sure.
monsters. And so you said you read a lot of mythology as a child, and these kind of almost like classical mythology roles keep coming up, even in the science, even in Gene Roddenberry's Andromeda. Andromeda is from mythology, and even in those aliens you're fighting are kind of, well, the representations of those two kind of paths you take when those darker paths one could take when something bad hits you. Like, what am I going to do? Like, turn, curse God and die? Am I going to go like the Nietzscheans or the Magog, like the demonic or the atheistic? And Dylan Hunt fought against those things, but also Hercules keeps fighting against, well, about every legendary. I think you've fought every on screen just about every monster there is, from the Hydra to Medusas to mummies, I think. So I'm curious your thoughts on why we need monsters for these stories. Why can't we tell the same kind of stories with just, say, other human villains? What is this almost eternal appeal of having heroes like the ones you portray fight monsters in particular?
Well, I think that stems from our childhood, right? We have these dreams and there's these monsters in there. And I think there's also so many movies that show monsters. And we did stick to mythology in quite a few of the episodes, but at the same time, they created a lot of monsters too. It just makes it more like, I think it emphasizes the good defeating evil out there. And I think it makes people feel comfortable no matter what age they are, saying, "Yeah, all right, he beat that monster. I can beat my own monsters in my life," And it's just a cachet that I think makes it interesting for people to watch and really fall in love with the hero even more than if he just fought an evil guy, like say a Hitler out there, which definitely you want to fight. But I think it's kind of cool that they would come up with just other creatures that had nothing to do with mythology, and that made it fun, And the stunt guys, I don't know if they loved having to fight in all these masks and body stuff they had to wear to look like these monsters. It's probably tough for them to see and things, but I don't know. I think the fans really, really enjoyed it. I still do these Comic Cons, and it's so fun to have fans come up and say, now we're at a level, of course, that a lot of these people are the age I was when I was filming Hercules in my 30s, when they were 7 or 8 years old at the time. And now they have their kids watching it. So I'm starting to get in this next generation of kids watching the show. And it's a lot of fun. It's fun to see.
Yeah, and when so many of your characters would go up against these kinds of monsters, well, one might expect if say Kevin Sorbo was this classic Hercules and he would overcome the monsters, with his great strength. But more often than not, as I recall, you were making the monsters defeat themselves. Like a evil snake woman, you would make her stab herself. You would trick these monsters into using their own evil against them. I'm curious if you find any meaning to that, making monsters defeat themselves rather than just overcoming them with your own heroic strength.
I think it's just a way to show the clever side of Hercules. I guess is to show you can be clever and find a way to get around things. I just remember getting so many emails, so many letters, fans writing in and saying, look, I've always I'm a teenager, I'm angry, and I'm always getting in fights, and I love your show, and I realize I don't have to fight all the time. That I can either think my way out of problems or work my way out of problems without violence. And the writers did a great job of that, and I think the addition of humor in so many things, because you see some of the fight scenes where we're some kind of bar, some kind of place where we just want to enjoy Aeolus and Hercules are just hanging out talking, and a fight thing happens because people want to come and pick a fight with Hercules, and you throw a guy through the wall of the bar, and it's a cutout of his body that's made a hole now in the bar. So it's just there was always humor, and I would throw a guy 100 meters and he'd land in a cow pie in some other ranch next door, and then I would kick the sword out of a guy's hand. We would show a shot of that flying through the air, and as that guy in the cow pie that I threw 2 minutes ago is getting up, he gets hit in the back of the sword and falls back in the cow pie. There was just things like that, I think, that made everything fun and made everything just funny.
Yeah, and that's interesting that you'd get so much response out of, an action, essentially an action hero role, so much of a response from young people saying, watching that has helped me find my way out of this kind of violence and vicious confrontation. I think that was very much needed in the era of the 90s. Well, I don't know what I'm talking about. I might be very much needed right now. So
Oh, we
maybe.
need it now, boy. I'm telling you, there's more anger and hate out there and violence. I mean, it's incredible that this is happening to not only America, but to our world right now. It's just, we need I think more than anything, we need people to wake up and fight back this in a passionate way without all the anger and hate and divisiveness. And that's the sad thing.
Yeah, well, maybe that's our segue into getting into some of your current projects, because I mean, you've been for a while now carving out your own path. I think a lot of people in the entertainment industry, and well, in all sorts of industries, book industry, well, many others, try to follow along the traditional path of getting roles or getting publications going, getting things produced. And but for a while now, you've been carving out a different path, and it seems to have that same kind of pattern of this kind of heroic calling with moral commitment, and again standing up as well as in defiance of trends of darkness, I guess, and as a beacon of light kind of path. So I wonder if you could tell us some about your projects you have going on right now that you've been creating and carving your own path out for.
Yeah, but I just want to do more movies with positive message. I see a lot of things coming out of the cable world and you know, network world and stuff. It just seems to be so angry again. And, Walt Disney said back in the 1950s, said movies and television will influence youth. And I think you see that being played out right now in our streets. So I'm trying to combat that. And it's tough, when I'm in the independent world, we do movies in the $3 to $5 million range, when Hollywood does movies in the $200 to $300 million range with another $100 million they can throw at it to promote it. We got to rely on word of mouth. And so, I do movies that, family friendly, some are faith based, in a way, but I mean, I'm trying to do movies that have more of a positive message instead of a negative one. I got one, that I directed recently. It could be in theaters, in September. It's called Miracle in East Texas. It's a true story set in 1930 about two con men that would woo widows out of their money and fake oil wells. then declare a dry hole, move in the next town, and they end up striking oil in Kilgore, Texas, the largest oil fund in the history of the world. And I got Lou Gossett Jr. in it. I got Tyler Main in it. The great John Ratzenberger's in it. We just had a blast in it. So won all kinds of awards, from everything from judge's favorite to family favorite to best romantic comedy. I mean, it's just a big mixture of awards because they can't really pigeonhole it. But I just finished the Reagan movie with Dennis Quaid playing the President Reagan. I play as pastor in it. I'm about to direct the next Left Behind movie. If people know those books, there was sold like 80 million copies of those books. I'm directing and acting in that one up in Calgary. And from there, I go down to New Mexico to film a Western called Trailblazers. And I just like doing movies that the good guy wins, that there's horrible stuff in the world, but there's also people out there that got, that really want to do things in the right way and not the wrong way. I think we all know the difference between right and wrong. And I think there's just a lot of wrong being committed out there out of confusion and just not being educated enough to really, or maybe just ignorance is pulling people away from the facts of what's right in life, what's wrong in life. And I think people jump on bandwagons for different reasons. And right now they just got a lot of hate and anger out there. And I'm trying to put movies out there that got a positive message. I have one in theaters now for 2 months, still running, with Mira Sorvino and Peter Coyote, called The Girl Who Believes in Miracles. It's just a great little movie that has a positive message in it. And I hope people see my movie, Let There Be Light. I directed that one as well. Let There Be Light was in theaters about 2 years ago for 4 months. Let There Be Light streaming on Amazon right now. And other movies like What If and God's Not Dead and Abel's Field. And I've just been fortunate to be part of movies that are just more positive instead of negative, which is sort of the road that I want to be in. And I hope people want to jump on that road too. I think I took the road less traveled. I'm just going to try to make that road into a highway, I think.
Yeah, and you put your work in where your mouth is, your work where your mouth. I don't know the phrase for that, but it's not just saying we need more positivity out there. If people are hearing this and going, does he really have that level of work ethic? Just go on Kevin Sorbo's IMDb page one day and see. I don't think you've ever taken a day off, as far as I know, between acting, producing, directing, writing, your charity work on top of that, national spokesperson work. And on top of that, you kind of, I don't know, you might have a little bit of strange infamy for stirring people up on Twitter. And for somebody who wants to stand up, against those kinds of trends, it seems like Twitter would be, well, it seems like a den of vipers. It seems every time I've glanced into what's going on Twitter. That seems like going into the dragon's cave and fighting it there rather than out on the field. So
I certainly have. The trolls out there, these are very unhappy people. Let's face it. I could do a psychological profile on these people very easily. I know exactly where they stand with their employment, relationship, all that stuff. These are very, very angry, evil, sad people. And I can post "It's a beautiful day out there," and they're going to post something negative about that. But the majority of people that follow me, I mean, by far 95% that follow me are fans. They like what I post. And they defend me on that. I don't waste any time reading all the negative stuff. Trust me, I don't care to. I don't need that crap in my life. But these are people that want to drag me down. Misery loves company, right? That's where that phrase came from. They hate the fact that I'm one of those people that I believe in the capitalism of America, that this country is built on individuals, not on big government. And that's the truth. That's the fact. These are people that they've given up. They had maybe one failure in their life, and then they blamed the world and gave up. And then they blamed everybody else that worked hard. I'm a 13-year overnight success. I got 13 years of doors being slammed in my face, but I kept following my dream. I use failure as a positive instead of a negative. So, let those people wallow in their own misery. It's not my problem. And it's really too bad that we have these people that all they have in their life is hate. And all it does, their hate towards me doesn't affect my life. It just makes their life even more miserable. So, if anything, we got to feel sorry for people like this.
And for your projects that are those inspirational projects that you have going on, where you have that kind of shining beacon hero, not only image, but I think story being played out. Those links will be in the description. So anyone listening to that going, well, how do I find out about his studio, or how do I find out about all his projects where he and his wife are going into? Those are going to be in the links below. So check that out in the description. As we're kind of winding down on our time here, I'm curious if I could throw at you a question that might be the simplest of all questions,
Okay.
but perhaps also the most difficult. It's a two-part. You can answer both or either one. And I like to
All
ask
right.
all my guests this before they leave. What monster scared you most as a child? And or what is your favorite monster of all time?
My favorite monster of all time would be the creature from the Black Lagoon. I mean,
Oh yeah.
there's a movie from the 1950s, and I remember as a kid, in the late 60s, early 70s, watching the reruns of that. That creature today is still an amazing work of costuming. I
It
mean,
really is.
that whole idea that I mean, look what Jaws did for people. Creature from Black Lagoon. Sharks are in the salt water. Well, this creature could. I mean, I grew up in lakes in Minnesota. You can't see more than 3 feet in those lakes. So, is there something down there swimming below watching me? So that creature was an amazing creature. And I actually was at a Comic-Con, and I got to meet the guy who's still alive to this day that was in that outfit, and
No way.
he's still as
Yeah.
skinny as can be. I mean, he could still fit in that costume, because it was a pretty athletic looking creature. And I shot a movie called Bernie the Dolphin, which is a great movie for kids under the age of 10 or 11 years old. I shot Bernie the Dolphin 1 and 2, and we shot up there in on the north. Oh gosh, what's the name of it now? It's the oldest, very first dolphin marina place that opened up, and it's on the East Coast there in Florida. I want to say it's not Marathon because that's on the Key West, but anyway, it's that was where they filmed some of those movies, and
Huh.
it was pretty cool. I mean, they got the old poster up there still, and it was signed by all the people in the cast, and they got it framed up as you enter the place. And that creature to me was pretty impressive. That one scared the heck out of me.
Yeah, God, that one, and talk about stunts. I can't imagine. Maybe I just have a claustrophobia, underwater kind of fear. But well, just monsters underwater, I think, are even scarier than normal ones, as we found through our stories as well. But just trying to be in that suit underwater, I can't imagine it. But I can't imagine doing that stuff.
Oh yeah, I mean, I think he just had a smaller, altered oxygen tank, so he could stay under there longer. Because, yeah, I mean, if you watch that movie again, it's pretty cool. In the 1950s, it was a whole thing about creating, radiation, things that happened from the nuclear fallout. That was the big Cold War with Russia. That was the biggest fear. And when the bombs drop and all these creatures become, 100 times bigger than they really are, and they're stalking the world, giant ants to whatever. So it was an interesting time to see those movies as a kid when I was during the 60s and early 70s, the reruns of those.
Well, whether those creatures or the creature from the Black Lagoon, if they were to stand up against Kevin Sorbo's Hercules, they would go down. That's for sure. I tell you.
Hey, I want to throw in, people can go to sorbos.org. So SORBO, my last name, add an S, make a plural, sorbos.org, and sign up. We got a lot of stuff to keep you in touch with, let you know what's going on. Because, like I said earlier, I do all these independent movies, and the best way for these movies that are good family movies to get out there is word of mouth. We don't have $100 million like they do for the next Avengers movie to spend just on advertising. So we need all the help we can get from people that want to keep these movies going, because that's what I get stopped for now. I got to be honest with you. People stop me more now, not because of Hercules or Captain Dylan Hunt from Andromeda. I get stopped. They say, hey, make more movies like Let There Be Light and Soul Surfer. That's what we want. I mean, that's what people stop me for, which is amazing.
Yeah, in this era where you can seek out and get a hold of more media than you used to be able to, I think that's going to find a lot more success than perhaps it ever could have in the past. So congratulations on that. Again, that link is going to be for everybody in the description below, but sorbos.org. And again, it was a huge honor and a pleasure to talk with you here on the Monster Professor. So thanks again, Mr. Kevin Sorbo.
All right, Josh. Thanks a lot. Have a great week.